Could be. But I was in Norway last summer, 2 weeks after the massacre, and I was reading Anders Breivik's 1,500-page manifesto, and in which there's a lot of random bits about how much he likes Chinese food, which is kind of interesting. But given that he doesn't like Chinese people, but he likes the food, so and he was. He was talking a lot about the Knights Templar, and I was just once again realizing that the past 1,000 years in Europe has mostly been a big mess, thanks to groups like the Knights Templar, and many others. Alone for a Europe white and free, a sick and twisted man from an otherwise sane society, the image of Aryan blonde, almost iridescent with a manifesto quoting from the Crusades to the present, but he stood on many shoulders, of this we can be sure, a millennia of xenophobes who slaughter to be pure, since before the first crusade when a mighty Christian band hacked and stabbed and burned their way to the Holy Land. They say he acted alone, but in his mind he was another of those who came before him, his mighty Christian brothers who rode covered in armor, served their masters well. They vowed to chastity, they vowed to kill the infidel, they marauded west and east in the name of Christendom. They killed Jews, Muslims, pagans, fellow Christians by the thousand in the name of Jesus. From the Jordan to the Rhine, the red cross on their chest plates, their terrifying sign, in the shadow of the Knights Templar. This of the Pope, whose victims were left burning or hanging from a rope. The Lord's own Inquisition for 6 centuries, the ethnic cleansing of a continent, a Christian tyranny. European Jews and European Muslims fled the Christian caliphate to be protected by the Sultan. For 500 years they prospered beneath the Turkish sky. For those left behind, convert or die in the shadow of the Knights Templar. They say he acted alone, but he's living in a country where the xenophobic right is the second biggest party, and he's living on a continent that is overrun with prime ministers who tell us multiculturalism is done. They brag of their traditions, they swell with Christian pride for their civilization built on Holocaust and genocide. Anders Breivik pulled the trigger, but he did not write the play. That script was being written 1,000 years ago today, in the shadow of the Knights Templar. In Denmark after Fukushima happened, and I was thinking about why Denmark has no nuclear reactors. They never built one, unlike most other rich countries. They never built any. And like most good stories, there's a social movement to blame. It was in the 1970s. The fuel crisis had begun. The choices were presented to us as if we had none. Leaders of industry said they could solve the problem by mastering the power of the radioactive atom. Some folks in Western Jutland got a notion in their heads. They thought there might be something they could offer up instead. A few hundred people gathered at a little place called Tvind and declared their will to harness the power of the wind. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. There were many who said their science wasn't sound, that such a mighty windmill would simply topple to the ground. Some of them were scientists, the vast majority were not. But they knew with years of effort, you could do a lot. Word about the project spread far and wide. 100,000 visitors came to help and to advise. Until one day these windmill builders drove in with a crane and lifted up their giant wings with a mighty chain. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. Windcraft was completed. It reached up to the sky. Its wings churned in the air at 54 meters high. The critics all fell silent. No one now was jeering, as even industry agreed. This was some damn fine engineering. The wind regaled Jutland from the North Atlantic Sea, as it was seamlessly converted into electricity. It was power for the people, leukemia for none, when they declared in Denmark, just south of the midnight sun. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. They gave away the patents. They said knowledge should be free. And their plans were copied by a newborn industry. Soon Denmark would be known as a windmill building nation. And it all started with some hippies at the Tventkraft power station. Debates were held in Parliament about which way things should go. Build a nuclear reactor, the majority said no. It could have gone quite differently. In much of the world it did, except for those in Ulfborg who said we're getting off the grid. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. We're gonna build the biggest windmill in the world. He was one of, many, I don't know, tens of thousands of people from around Europe and around North America and elsewhere who went to Spain in the 1930s. And half of the Americans who went survived, and of course many others did not have anything like that rate of survival. The slogan of the Communist Party in the U.S. in the 1930s was "Communism is 20th century Americanism," which is a really boring slogan. And but in keeping with this slogan, the communists of the time named the battalions that were sent to Spain to fight alongside the Republic. Named them after American presidents, George Washington and the Abraham Lincoln battalions. The German battalion was much more sensibly named after a German communist, of course, named Ernst Thälmann. It was the biggest. They were old when I was young. Now they've all but passed away. Now it's just a second-hand memory of the day when from all around the world they sailed off to Spain fascists, where so many men were slain. Who will recall the days when they all stood side by side, now that the last Lincoln veteran died? Beside Martin Luther King, or in a veterans parade, you could see the men who made the journey to join the 15th Brigade. When men of many nations, of most every creed and hue, Catholics and Protestants, atheists and Jews, joined together in the trenches to turn back the fascist tide, now that the last Lincoln veteran died. The working class of many nations joined in a desperate bid with what weapons they could find. They fought to save Madrid from Brussels and Berlin, Galway and London town. Who will recall the brigadistas who went to take the fascists down? There beside the Spanish people, even the pigs and olives cried, now that the last Lincoln veteran died. Deserve only some of Franco's thanks, 'cause the fuel to move the armor came from the USA, and the men that they gunned down were from New York and Frisco Bay. Uncle Sam claimed he was neutral. Who will remember how he lied, now that the last Lincoln veteran died? They say people get conservative the older that they age. They say that being radical is just a youthful phase, but the finest communist I've known lived to 95, and he spent his whole life striving for humanity to thrive. To forget these fallen heroes is something I cannot abide, now that the last Lincoln veteran died. Now that the last Lincoln veteran died. There's a valley in Spain called Jarama. It's a place that we all know so well. It was there that we gave of our manhood, where so many of our brave comrades fell. You honest men know who you are, all of you who dare be free. Combine with us upon the sea. Together we will drink a toast, ride the wind on down the coast, see the merchant shipped aboard, raise a jar and swing a sword, watch to see the merchant captain crying when they see the black